in this country. I think there's one general thing, oh yes, because you would stand up and say, let's make this peaceful. Let's not create this animosity. 4 blocks away, you have a mosque. You don't need anything, and it's been written that that mosque signifies any time that they have been successful in whatever they're conquering. Oh, well, that's...
They have a lot of questions to get through. We want to try to make sure that all the questions people have written down get addressed.
Even
So
within
please
the
let
Muslim
them speak at this
community,
point.
it is not really, people are divided. There are a lot of discussion about who's with the mosque and who is not. Because the pain that we all went through in 9/11 is very close to us, as was indicated by Ismail. People from the Muslim community
But we're
will
not
also...
hearing anything.
Well, I think maybe I can't tell you why you're not hearing it, because if you are reaching out, I mean, people are talking about it. But the point is that, and writing about it, both sides. But the point got to be, I understand the pain, and I personally at the beginning felt the same way. It's very insensitive, it's not worth it, we really should move it. However, as the things escalated, and I'm only talking about my behalf here, is that we are in a country that stands for freedom of religion. And if we start giving that, I don't know what it would mean further on. And then at the same
not
time...
to have their religion, they're asking them just don't build it there.
Okay.
Very simple.
It is not, so let's go about the facts. It is not, okay, you go ahead.
I just want to point out that the mosque, first of all, that, you know, for you to say that the moderates are not being sensitive, you need to understand, as moderates, nobody came and asked us. This is the private property of a group that did not consult with the community. You know what? I don't have any power to go and tell them you can build this or not build this. They're talking to people in New York about zoning laws. As an average moderate citizen, I have no say in that, and I think you're attributing to the average Muslim American citizen powers that they really do not have.
We do have a voice
It's
of
not,
protest.
but they have...
There are people writing, you know what? There are people writing about it, and there are different views.
Well, I'm going to fast forward by 2 minutes. Please read the cards, answer the questions.
This is a statement, so Islam is built on love and faith and charity. Why is there so much hatred from Muslims? There is no hatred from Muslims. Muslims do not hate the West. Muslims do not hate people in the United States. What you see and you call hate are terrorist organizations that are hated by moderate Muslims like any other person on the earth. So I have no idea why.
Yeah, I think also it's worth it to mention that there are more people who die from terrorist attacks outside the U.S., especially in Arab and Muslim countries, than in the U.S., in Muslim countries than in. I mean, you hear about all the bombs taking place every day in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places. So I mean, we're as much as a victim of this terrorism as you are. Now, and as in all religions, people use their religion as a banner to try to accomplish political goals by using force. That's what's happening.
This is a good question. This is actually a good question which I'd like to respond to. Are Muslims who engage in terrorist activities doing so in obedience to the Quran or in violation of it? Well, this is a really important point. And if you want to read a really, really good book that will help you understand a lot of things, there's a very interesting guy called Juan Cole who wrote a book called Dialoguing with the Muslim World. And he makes a really, really interesting distinction between a cult and a religion. And he says, in classical Islamic law, the defense of Muslims cannot be done by a rogue group of people. It can only be taken on by a state. So if people in Egypt, for example, feel threatened, they can't take this responsibility of self-defense like a militia and go and defend themselves. They have got to submit to the authority of the state, i.e. they have a commander-in-chief. Those who, like bin Laden, take it upon themselves to go and strike for whatever grievance they have are actually acting like a cult. So they are outside of the traditional law that rules Islam. So these people need to be looked at as rogue elements. They are a cult because individual Muslims are not allowed to take it upon themselves to defend or to attack any for whatever reason. This is the prerogative. It is absolutely what, you know what the problem is the Quran is not the Sharia, you're mixing it. The Quran is developed from it by very, very sophisticated legal traditions. You have, just like you have constitutional scholars, you have Islamic scholars who develop these laws. So if you think that you're going to Google the Quran and you're going to understand how Islamic law operates, you're not really getting a very complex and nuanced picture of how things work.
Do you?
I have a question for you guys that may resolve this issue. In regards to the Quran and translations of it, what's the official teachings as far as what's considered correct translations of the Quran?
Okay, so let me, first the Quran's original version of the Quran was in Arabic, which is a language still spoken today. That's why we say for certainty there's no changes, there's no translations, or somehow people interpreted some ancient language into a new language. It's the same original language in which the Quran came in. It's Arabic. In terms of translations to English or other languages, which versions are the correct one? I'm not sure I'm not the right person to ask about that. But if you'd like, we can send you by email the list of maybe the English version so you can read it yourself. Several of them.
You can look up Yusuf Ali. He's one of the respected translation book, and there's only one copy of that, and not one copy. I mean, there's one translation of that. It's not changed. And that is never going to be replacing the Quran, but it is as close as it can.
Okay, one question here, one question.
Yeah, sure. Clarification, you're talking about nobody can order a war, and what you were saying to your answer. I don't know a lot about it, just some things that I read, maybe retain some of it, but when they talk about these, when the terrorists want to do something, they have to get permission, and there's a fatwa that's issued by some religious leader, isn't that what they're talking about? They're going up a chain of command. There is somebody that's in power that authorizes, that says it is okay in the name of Allah to do that.
As I mentioned earlier, I want to refer to what I said earlier that people said had no value. I clearly stated there is no religious hierarchy in Islam. There is nobody between you and God. There is nobody that come and say this is allowed and this is allowed. If some people go and do that, that doesn't mean it's Islam. If some people practice something that is not in line with the Muslim principle, that doesn't mean it is Islam.
So these ayatollahs
So
in
these
Iran
are
not practicing Islam? Is that?
Not Islamic?
Is that?
you are judging.
No,
Okay,
there's
the
different-
whole
No,
1.4.
I'm just asking. I'm not
Okay.
judging, I'm just
No,
asking.
you're not judging.
Just asking.
You're describing what happens in Iran and making it apply to 1.4 billion Muslims in the world. Iran, how many million people there?
70.
But also,
That is all what is happening there. If that's what's happening in Iran, and that's what makes all the noise, and that's what makes all the media, don't extend it to the religion.
Right,
So that is true.
No, but he's
That's
asking an
happening
important
there in
question.
Iran.
so they're not
Yeah.
practicing Islam? Is that, so those ayatollahs and everything else, they're not really practicing
No,
what?
Can I there are two major branches of Islam. There are the Sunnis and then there are the Shiites. And the Iranians are Shiites. And they do have a kind of clergy establishment, but they do not have exactly the same function as, let's say, a Catholic priest. But what they do have is they do have religious scholars who can then interpret it, and people will follow what they say. I have never heard of a Shiite cleric saying that terrorism is justified.
By the way, of the total world population, 90% are Sunnis, 10% are Shias, and the 10% are mostly in Iran and Iraq, and that's it. the rest of the countries. Egypt, for example, is 99%
Predominantly Sunni.
Sunni. So